Welcome to Books of the Book. We're studying 2 Thessalonians, a letter of Paul to the church at Thessalonica. I'm John Pauline, and with me today is my pastor, John Ciccarelli.
John, good to be with you again as we continue our study in 2 Thessalonians. We'll be in chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. And here Paul puts his pastoral hat on, and he's talking to the Thessalonians about some end-time events. And they have some misunderstandings, and he's going to do some correcting a bit of their views. So I'm looking forward to our study together today.
All right. Well, like he did in 1 Thessalonians, he's moving from affirmation and encouragement in chapter 1. Now he's moving to exhortation, to correction. There are some problems here. And I have to tell you, one of my beloved teachers said to me a long time ago, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 is the most difficult passage in the entire New Testament to understand. Now, I've got a few rivals for that, like the seven trumpets of Revelation and maybe the middle part of Revelation 17. Those are pretty challenging passages too, but this is really a challenging passage because in a real sense, we don't have all the evidence. Would you read maybe verse 5? And I think Paul explains our problem, even though he didn't realize it at the time.
Sure. He says, "Don't you remember that when I was with you, I told you these things?"
All right, so that's the background of this passage. He starts telling himself, "Oh, I don't need to tell you this. You already know this, and you know that, and you know the other thing." 2 Thessalonians 2 is something like listening to one side of a phone conversation, and you're hearing what the one person is saying. You don't know what the other side knows. You don't know what they are saying. You don't know what they're asking. And so there's a lot of mystery in this text. Paul had a specific purpose at that time and place. God would like us to mine this passage for some things that will encourage us today, Bible prophecy. But I'd have to admit, at the end of the day, we're not certain about everything that's going on in this passage. Many challenging features. But there was a goal, the reason why he gave this. And what was that?
So John, the goal here is pastoral, that he's really wanting to care for them. He's not laying everything out specifically like we might like. He's speaking specifically to their situation, which of course we'd probably like to know more about. But
so this is not like Daniel 2 or something where the whole prophecy is right there, where we can see it and get a handle on it. He's speaking to them. Some of the things we'd like to know aren't here.
Yeah. Well, let's move on then to verses 1 through 3, where he continues to write to them. He says, "Now with reference to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering to him, we implore you, brothers, that you might not be quickly shaken from your mind, or disturbed, either by a spirit or a word or a letter, as it were from us, implying that the day of the Lord has already come. Do not let anyone deceive you in any way."
I think there's one thing I want to say right from the start. I mentioned in a previous program how there's certain Greek words that Paul uses whenever he's answering a question from the church. That's not here. In other words, the church isn't asking for help on this subject. Paul is introducing help on the subject because he's concerned about it. They're not asking, they're fine. Right. They think they've got it all together. So Paul is stepping in and saying, wait a minute, we got some problems here, and I'm aware that we have some problems. So Paul's he's being the disruptive prophet. We mentioned in an earlier program that sometimes we read the Bible simply to comfort us in what we already believe, simply to support what we already think. Right. And truly, prophets are almost always disruptive when they're living prophets. God sends them into the situation to break people out of this comfortable complacency that they're in. And this is what Paul is doing. They think they've got it right. He says, no, you don't. Here's your problem. Right. So he's moving in on this one. A lot of the language here in 2 Thessalonians 2, especially these first verses, echoes the language of Jesus. And it also echoes the language of 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, where he's addressing the same subject. So Paul has the first letter in mind. He also has some of the sayings of Jesus in mind as he's writing 2 Thessalonians 2. Now, there's confusion in the church, and there seems to be three possible sources. Says they've been shaken or disturbed by a spirit or a word or a letter as it were from us, implying that the day of the Lord has already come. So Paul doesn't seem to be exactly clear. Why did they get off on this track? Was it a spirit, some prophetic teaching? Did somebody step up and say, hey, the Lord has shown me this is where we need to go? Or was it a word, a rumor, or something that came on the grapevine? You know? Or was it a letter? Was it 1 Thessalonians that triggered this? Or was it some other letter that claimed to be from Paul and wasn't? Paul isn't clear exactly how they got off track, but he knows that they're off track, and that's what he's going to deal with. And what exactly the problem is, the language isn't clear if they were teaching that the second coming is almost there or that it's already there. And I think most scholars would go with the already there, because the whole point of chapter 1 is saying that that coming of Jesus is going to be so visible, so noisy, so disruptive, you're not going to miss it. If Jesus has already come, somebody's living in fantasy land. So he's trying to say, no, he hasn't come. There's things that have to happen first.
Yeah. And it's almost like they kind of failed to heed Jesus' warnings, you know, about sign chasing. You know, in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus says, see that you're not troubled about these things. Although it's so easy to get troubled about those things, and we can live in that kind of fear factor. You know, we see the things, and they can stress us out, they can worry us, and it's not hard to do, especially again in this day and age with the economy, things going on internationally, all kinds of things. And we see the earthquakes and so forth, and we can get stressed out, we can get worried, but we need to remember that Jesus said, see that you're not troubled. And this can happen, you know, for Christians that have been mature and growing and walking with Jesus in a long time. We can slip into this temptation. It's so easy to get our eyes off Jesus and look at the signs or all those things that are happening around us. And yet Jesus keeps saying, no, you know, focus on me.
Well, studying the Bible is hard work. Studying texts like this is hard work. And it's easier just to, you know, chase rumors and signs and things like that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's so easy to move into that, and that seems to be what they were doing here in Thessalonians. They were doing a little sign chasing. And
they were happy about it. They didn't need Paul to disturb their
They didn't know that they needed Paul to come in. But thank God the Spirit was working through Paul to say, hey, we need to work with this. Well, let's move on to verses 3 through 4 in our study. And Paul continues, and he says this, do not let anyone deceive you in any way, because that day will not come except the apostasy come first, even the revelation of the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction, who opposes or exalts himself over everything that is called God or is an object of worship, so as to sit in the temple of God as God, proclaiming himself to be God. Whoa.
So Paul is just saying, look, what you guys think has happened can't possibly have happened, because there's so many other things that have to happen before Jesus comes. So you've jumped the gun in a sense here. You know, hold off, relax just a little bit. There are things that have to happen. And it's interesting, as we look at these two letters, Paul is struggling to bring them to a balance. Christians need to have a balance, on the one hand, anticipating the soon coming of Jesus. You don't want to come to the place where you put him far, far off. You want to constantly have fresh, Jesus is coming soon. At the same time, you need to occupy till he comes. You need to prepare, you know, plan for your children and your grandchildren. You need to worry about retirement, life insurance. Keeping those two in tension doesn't always, it's not easy to do. And Paul is wrestling to do that. On the one hand, excited about Jesus soon coming, yet planning as if he might not come just right away. Now here's another one of these incomplete sentences of Paul. And in my translation, the term, that day will not come, isn't there. Is not there at all. But you have to say it, because there's no verb, no noun, no nothing. I mean, he just starts off in the middle of the sentence and says, except the apostasy come first, even the revelation of the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction who opposes, you know. In the Greek, it's not a sentence. So you have to supply a sentence in order to make sense of it, which is why translations and translators have struggled with this forever. So he's saying, okay, the day of the Lord has not come, because before it comes, first there's going to be the apostasy, is the language of the Greek. In other words, a falling away in the church. The apostasy will come. The man of sin, or some translations have it man of lawlessness. And the reason for that is in the Greek, the two words are almost the same. Sin is hamartia, and lawlessness is anomia. So you see, the two sound about the same, so when scribes were copying the Bible, they may have heard the one and written the other, is what seems to have happened. So the man of sin and the man of lawlessness is the same person. It's not something different. Want to make that very clear. What he's basically saying is the big challenge ahead is that the biggest opposition to the gospel is not going to be the Roman Empire. It's going to have a Christian face. And that is tragic. That is shocking. He's saying, look, until the apostasy comes, until the greatest opposition to true faith comes from inside the house, Jesus hasn't come yet. It's the point that he's making. Who is this man of sin? Who is this opposer? The language in verse 4 offers two options. When you go back to the Old Testament and other parts of the Bible, the language in verse 4 can be applied to two different things. One can be applied to Satan. He is, in a sense, the one who opposes. And by the way, it's all present tenses here. So whatever this is, it's already present in Paul's day.
Is opposing.
You see, he's the one who opposes, and that would be Satan. Temple of God would be the church. You see, so the one who opposes, calls for an object of worship, that seems to point to Satan, but it also points to the little horn of Daniel 7 and Daniel 8. And that is not Satan, but is an agent of Satan, an earthly agent, a power on this earth that serves Satan's goals. So there's a tension here between Satan, an agent of Satan, as to who this man of sin, man of lawlessness really is.
Well, I sure appreciate what Paul has written, but I wish we knew what Paul was leaving out. That would just make everything a lot more easier, for sure.
Pastor John, it gets worse. Read verses 5 to 7.
All right, here we go. Here we go. Do you remember that when I was with you, I told you these things? And now you know what is restraining him, in order that he might be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will continue until he is out of the way. Wow. Well, it seems like Paul is kind of outlining three stages of history, if you will. The time of mystery and restraint that he mentions, a revelation of man of sin, and then the second coming.
That's right. So there's several things that have to happen before Jesus can return. And folk, I want you to put your thinking caps on. Get your Bible in front of you. In 14 minutes, we're going to touch some of the most difficult passage in all the Bible. And we're going to bring in a lot of information. It's going to go by quick. You may want to run this program by at a future time, see it again. But for now, let's take a quick break.